Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today on our continuation of the Pallmann webinar series. My name is Josh Newberger. I'm the Director of Marketing, and I'm joined with our Product and Technical Manager on the Pallmann side of things, Kelsey Quigg.
Morning.
We greatly appreciate everybody's time. Hope everybody's doing well, staying safe, staying healthy, and we've really enjoyed bringing these various webinar topics to you throughout this, we'll just call it interesting time, new way of doing business, and certainly hope that you guys have enjoyed the topics and enjoyed the conversation as well. So today, as we kind of round out the series for the year, what we wanted to do is just kind of do a little recap of our finishes and our sealers. We actually have launched two new sealers and a new finish. And Kelsey's going to touch a little bit on that, but then we're also going to talk just a little bit about some waterborne tips, tricks, things that we've seen throughout the years, things that we've learned from contractors such as yourself and distributors at our schools. Unfortunately, we can't do it. We're not doing our schools right now, so we're going to hopefully pass along some of this knowledge to you. And with that, I'm going to turn the podium over to Kelsey, and he's going to bring up a PowerPoint here, and we're going to kind of get going. Just a little bit of a lay of land. There is a section, or there's a feature off to your right, or if you're on your mobile phone, an area where you can type in questions. Just go ahead and type your questions in there. We'll get to them. We'll answer them right at the end of the webinar. But again, thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to continuing these as we push forward through 2021. So with that, Kelsey, take her away.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Let me go ahead and get my screen up here. Okay, so like Josh mentioned, we're going to do kind of a quick recap of a little bit of our sealers and finishes, and then definitely talk a little bit about some tips and tricks. But honestly, it'd be nice to have a good discussion at the end of this, where we can have some good questions and answers, because it's hard to cover every little thing, on a PowerPoint. So definitely at the end of it, let's have some good discussions here. But I'm Kelsey Quigg, as mentioned before. But before we kind of get started here with our products, just like to do a little reminder of who we are. We are a global supplier for flooring installation materials, okay, and we are Utz is our parent company, and here in the U.S. we are Utz North America, okay. But Utz, we're family owned. It's the 4th generation right now in charge, and we're publicly traded on the German Stock Exchange, okay. So having a family-owned company and having the care of everyone out there is very important, okay? We care about our products, we care about our customers. We have 7 brands within the Utz group that all focus on flooring. But in North America, our main focus is Utz, our parent company. They manufacture everything underneath flooring and all floor coverings with moisture mitigation, primers, leveling compound, patch adhesive. Then we have Wolf. Wolf manufactures all the machines for the flooring world, maybe floor stripping machines or installation sanding machines, anything in the machine world or hand tools. And then of course Pallmann, and that's our hardwood division that you guys are more familiar with. Now Pallmann itself, we were established in 1900. Okay, so we're a very old company, been around for a very long time, have a lot of expertise in the flooring world. We also are a global supplier of hardwood flooring installation products. Right, everything underneath flooring, everything on top of hardwood flooring. But our main focus is definitely our waterborne finish technology or sealer technology. We feel that we have, with our innovation and technology, that we have the best sealers and finishes on the market out there today. We are manufactured in Würzburg, Germany, under our chemist's eyes, and then it gets shipped here to Denver, Colorado. And from here, we double check all the products, and then we ship it out to our distribution network around the nation. Just kind of a quick map here to show everyone. These are our territory managers out there. They're versed in sales and also technical aspects. They know how to apply and use every one of our products, and obviously can answer any question that is needed. So if you see your territory where you're located at, and you don't know your territory rep, definitely contact us so we can get you in contact with them and get in touch with them. They're your resource. You know, whether you're a contractor or a distributor, these are your resources. These are your guys to help take care of you with any Pallmann questions or anything like that. So just look at the names, look in your area, and let us know if you do not have the information about one of these characters. So thank you. Once again, I'm Kelsey Quigg. I've been in the hardwood floor industry for a little over 25 years. You know, I started as a contractor for a company. I was out for a little under 8 years. You know, did a lot of some installs, but mainly sand and finish was kind of my deal, and a good amount of warranty work. I was warranty supervisor also. Then I had my own business for about 6 years, and where I did all aspects of flooring, of course, even concrete preparation and self-leveling. You know, in touch with all of the hardwood. And then I've been with Pallmann here now for, I got to update this. It says over 11 years, but I apologize. 2 weeks ago, I just had my 12-year anniversary here. So I've been here for a little over 12 years. And right now I am the product and technical manager of the Pallmann division, and do a lot of product development, but really handle the schools, the trainings, the teaching, things in the technical aspects with our products and the workings thereof. So just to start real quick with we're going to kind of start on the sealer side here, where we really are going to, sorry here real quick. Just want to make sure, okay, sorry, little technical difficulties there. With our temperature, it's really ideal to apply our sealers between 65 and 80 degrees. Okay, that's your room temperature. And it's just kind of the best practice for anybody's waterborne material, right? These are all kind of best practice, you know, for your job sites. You want to make sure the sealer and wood are definitely close in temperature, right? So you really want to leave the material on the job site to acclimate, unless it's too hot, of course. Okay, we don't want it. You know, if it's a house without air conditioning, new construction, and it's 85 degrees in there, right? But typically you want your sealer and wood to be around the same temperature. Now the summer's over, right? But it's still hot in some areas, so be careful that material doesn't heat up too much in the vehicle. It's very easy, you know, even an 80-degree day out there, and you've got your material, your sealer in a van, that's going to heat up to over you know, 100 degrees in that van. Okay, so after a couple hours, you're gonna have very warm material. So definitely keep that in mind to not leave it in your truck or van before applying. And cooler material will always perform better than hot material. Okay, hot material is gonna set up quickly, it's gonna dry fast, you're gonna lose some of your forgiveness, things like that. So definitely want to keep it a little bit more on the cooler side. Keep that in mind. Another kind of discussion here with wood is definitely going to be sanding sequence. We don't want you to skip grits when sanding, right? Like going from a 36 to 80 on a belt sander, that sealer is going to absorb way too much, right? You've ripped open the pores, you've ripped open the grain, it's going to soak in too far, and then your finish is going to soak in too far, and then you're not going to have a good build of a mill thickness of material on top, right? But when the sealer absorbs too much in some areas and not in others, that's where you may lose some of your forgiveness, okay, and have discoloration. At the same token, we don't want you to sand too fine, right? Especially on, it's easy to do on your exotic woods and dark woods, right? And meaning like no finer than 100 belt or 100 on a multi-head with paper. Really want to screen around a 120. And these are averages, again, because you will lose some forgiveness if that wood is sanded too fine, right? The soft grain, it's going to absorb in, no doubt. But if you really polish that hard grain, it's not going to absorb in as far. And what's going to happen is it's going to have different depth of the absorbency, which may cause some discoloration, especially on your pigmented sealers, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. Okay, and the reason for this is you want consistent absorbency. And that's why stain manufacturers out there recommend finishing in an 80, you know, one does an 80 or 100 grit belt, okay, and a 100 grit screen, because they found, especially with a colored product like a stain, that's where you get your consistent absorption penetration, okay? And we want the same with any of our sealers or anybody's sealers. Just consistency is key, again, especially for those pigmented ones. And again, just always recommend follow the NWFA guidelines. That's definitely something we want to encourage out there. Just best practice to have the best floors out there is to have these type of guidelines. So first thing, we're going to talk about some sealers. So why do we use a sealer? Okay, that's always kind of a question we still get out there. But first, all of our sealers are not going to amber fade over time. Okay, we use raw materials that are not UV sensitive. They're not going to yellow. They're not going to amber out on you. They're going to keep their color true. So very important with our products. A sealer will truly seal the wood pores for a better finished build. Kind of like I just talked about with the sanding sequence, right? A sealer is a larger molecule and it will seal the wood pores complete, so the finish will sit on top. And that finish has to sit on top. That's what provides your durability, your scuff and scratch resistance, your chemical resistance, okay? You really need to have that material to sit on top. Sealer does increase overall durability and chemical resistance. Not only does it kind of absorb in the wood and create that layer, and like I discussed with the finish sitting on top, it basically will stop any liquids or anything like that getting down into the wood itself, okay? So it's got a nice sealed layer and then a good mill thickness of finish on top. Sealers will decrease issues with side bonding, okay? Chances of white lines. If anyone's ever seen putting finish directly on a floor and it shrinks where you get maybe panelization, okay? Because that finish can act like an adhesive when it gets down in between the cracks. Where our sealers are more elastic, they'll stretch more, right? So when a wood shrinks, the sealer will take some of that burden of the stretching, and then when it gets far enough, it'll break and it'll break the finish. So it's going to reduce white lines, going to reduce any of that situations, concerns, especially if you're in climates where the wood shrinks and expands on a consistent basis. And you increase your finish coverage, okay, and the ease of application. Having that sealed floor, the finish is going to float more on top when you're applying and coating. It's going to be more consistent, easier to get consistent sheen. Just it's going to be easier because you're not going to get that absorbency, right? No contractors out there that do 3 coats of finish. That smaller, denser molecule gets in the wood, penetrates differently. And so with that different absorption, you get different discoloration. It's a little bit more difficult to apply and have good consistency. So a sealer takes away all of that, any of those concerns. And then of course for stains, we're preventing any washout. I think if any of you out there have applied a nice, let's say medium brown stain, put a waterborne finish directly on top, and within a couple days or even many weeks, you come back and you just see how it just pulled that color. You know, really washes out the stain. It's been very common for many years out there by using our sealer that will keep that color true. Especially for the darker stains here, like our product here, the PALL-X color. Okay, we're going to talk about kind of our original products here first. Our PALL-X color, single component that for raw or stained wood, and it adds a layer of protection to your floor, kind of like I just discussed before, to seal those wood pores. It has a deep coloring effect, which can replace the use of dry fast sealers to create that oil look. If you put PALL-X color right next to an oil modified, right off the bat, they look the same. Same coloring, whatever species of wood. But after some weeks, you will see that the oil modified will amber and fade and kind of yellow and orange out, depending on how much sun is on there. Ours will not. Okay, we'll keep its color true. It isn't recommended to enhance vibrancy of the stain. Okay, like we discussed before, it won't wash it out. It'll help keep it true. But we don't recommend using the color on top of a white or a pastel stain, grays or those light colors out there. That's what we want to use our other sealer for. This is mainly for your darker stains and also for your darker woods. Okay, color can be used on all wood species, but for your dark and exotic woods, it's mainly recommended to really show that color, right? If you have a Kumaru, Ipe, Brazilian cherry, something with that, you want that color to pop. This is the product for it, okay? Really enhances it. Next sealer here is PALL-X Clear, probably familiar with. Single component, obviously for raw and stained wood floors, you know, the light pastel stains. Ideal when a clear light tone appearance is desired. And as I mentioned there, for the white or pastel, grays, even have the kind of peach I think I've seen out there for pastels, to really just make sure that that stays true to the coloring that is desired. Now, clear may not be suitable for all wood types, okay? Your walnuts, or maybe some of your cherries out there, for example, they'll have chemical reactions that's going to lead to a patchy colorization, or maybe even a grayish hue. It's going to stick, but it may not be the most forgiving out there. So kind of rule of thumb that we like to have is for your lighter wood species, PALL-X clear. For your darker wood species, or you want that oil type look on the lighter ones, PALL-X color. Okay, that's going to really keep your consistency, and any chances of issues, you won't have any. Now with clear and color, you can do any application style with T-bar, Padco, brush, roller, anything like that, roller application too. But what I'm going to discuss first, some kind of tips and tricks, is going to be with the sealer, with the T-bar and the cut-in pad. So you can see right there, on the left, we do not recommend using a weighted T-bar. You want the lightweight T-bar on the bottom, or there's the real plastic ones out there. Those are nice. They really help, get a thicker coverage rate out there. And then, of course, the cut-in pad. So one of the tricks here, or a tip, I guess, is on the right, you can see in this Brazilian cherry where what you want to do with the cut-in pad and with your T-bar, when you stop, like if you're doing the edges or doing a pullback, you really want to feather. And you can see on the top part where it's feathered, right? That's going to give you a much better chance when you put the next, say the middle guy comes through, or you're putting your next layer down, to that everything blends in. Where the bottom part, I've seen many times with cut in on the edges, where guys just leave a straight line. Anytime that you leave a straight line with anybody's product on a raw floor, and if it sits long enough, you definitely can increase the chances, let's say, for a potential issue, right? I mean, the straight line could potentially show. With that said, obviously you do not want to go too far ahead doing the edges. You want to stay consistent with the T-bar guy in the middle. But the feathering is going to give you a lot longer working time, or forgiveness time, than you will having that straight line. Now, when you pour your puddle, like you're doing a pullback, when you're pulling back out of a room, or you're pulling back to get out of the house. I know these are kind of small, but just kind of give the point. You want to pour that puddle into the wet, fresh sealer, like I have on the left. Okay, that way, again, you don't have straight lines or absorbing into the wood. It's already on a wet material where there's absorption, and that's going to give you a nice, smoother, consistent application, but it's going to decrease chances of having an issue. Okay, it's going to help keep, you can see where it's feathered pretty nicely there. Okay, that's the ideal way. On the right side, we've seen too many times out there and seen contractors where they pour it on the raw wood. Well, you're going to have inconsistencies in the depth, right? Where we've got the already wet area, then you've got a dry area, and then when you have the puddle. And you're going to leave a puddle line potentially, but you're going to have inconsistent coverage rate, and that's what can create issues with sealers out there, especially if it's warm, where material is going to set up a little bit faster, or even different absorbency based on your sanding sequence. Okay, we want to limit, is what this whole kind of presentation is about. We want to limit our chances of issues and have a best practice to have for success. So I did a little puddle thing here where I poured a puddle on the left and I let it sit for 1.5 minutes. So after 1.5 minutes, I went ahead and coated it in the middle so you can still see the line. Now, with our material, with PALL-X color and PALL-X clear, they're very forgiving, very easy to use. It did go away after a couple minutes on the right there. You can still see the material is wet, but it went away. But if you let that puddle sit too long, there's a good chance it's going to show. And I know a lot of competitors' products out there, they will show if you let it sit 1.5 minutes. Okay, but basically this was just kind of a visual for you to see when we're talking about why we pour into the wet finish or wet sealer before we pull. Anytime that you pour a puddle like that cross grain, there's always going to be a chance that it may show. We're just trying to increase our success, right? Next sealer we're going to talk about real quick is going to be NATURESEAL. This is a new one we introduced this summer. And NATURESEAL is a pigment. It's It's a waterborne, one component, and it's ideal for lighter color wood species where you're really looking for an untreated look. Okay, where it's kind of the raw floor. We get asked that quite a bit from contractors and homeowners and builders out there. They want that raw appearance on the floor. Now, how do we achieve that? Well, it contains a small amount of white pigment. Where PALL-X clear is a clear material, but it still kind of enhances the wood a little bit. We're having this white pigment here in NatureSeal that really dulls it out. It really kind of keeps that natural look where it looks like you don't even have a coat of sealer on top. Kind of a trendy item right now. Now with NatureSeal, it can be used on exotic or darker wood species, but we do want you to perform a test. And it's not about adhesion, it's really about color. We have a Brazilian cherry here in our training center, and it looks beautiful on the Brazilian cherry. But on a kumaru, it's a real dark wood. It has a little bit of a hazy appearance to it. It's not the most ideal appearance. Okay, so definitely want to test to see if it's what you desire. But what we've seen with NatureSeal, it does really well on a lot of the exotics out there. But just double check. One of the big features with this new product is it's solvent free. Okay, so it's less than 5 VOCs. One of the greenest sealers out there on the market. So very safe, I'm gonna say it's healthy to breathe in, but you basically same VOCs as you'd be breathing in when you walk outside. Okay, so one of the very few solvent-free waterborne products on the market. And it must be roller applied. Okay, the NatureSeal and WHITESEAL are two new sealers here. Because of the pigment, because of the viscosity, it must be roller applied. And we'll talk about that application in a second. The next one that we introduced this summer is PALL-X WHITESEAL. Okay, it's also a one component. It is for use on lighter wood species where an Arctic wood appearance is desired. It also contains a small amount of white pigment, but it's more than the NatureSeal. So this really helps you achieve that white floor look. That's why it's really made for your lighter wood species. On darker wood, you can kind of see a white haze. So it's a little too much white for the darker woods. That's where we recommend the NatureSeal. You may apply 2 coats for an intense whitening effect. It's kind of a hot, trendy item out there people are asking for, having that lighter appearance. Or if any of you have done a white stain and you want it whiter, or the homeowner wants the floor whiter, this is definitely the product for you on that. So it's kind of an item out there that is gaining more and more traction with homeowners and the look that they're wanting to achieve. This product also is solvent free, so less than 5 VOCs, very green, greenest out there in the market. And it too must also be roller applied. Okay, so now because of these are roller applied, I'm going to talk a little bit about some tips on the roller application on a raw floor. So first thing you want to do when you're rolling is you want to roll in small sections. So this picture of the panel here is 10 feet wide. It's not the smartest to do the whole 10 feet width, if you've got a big room, because then what happens is your stop marks, sit there for a longer period of time, especially if it's a little warmer out there or a little warmer material where it's going to set up a little quicker. That's going to increase your chances of having stop-start marks. And especially when you're dealing with a pigmented product like a NatureSeal or WHITESEAL or any of the other competitors' pigmented sealers, the longer that you let the line sit, the more chance you're going to have for it to show. Okay, so just pick a section that's about maybe 5 to 6 feet wide. Try to make sure that those lines that go across grain sit for the least amount of time possible. With the grain, you're gonna be just fine. Plenty of working time. But cross grain, again, we're trying to just do best practices here for success. Now, when you do your roller application, the first thing you need to do is saturate your roller, right? So pour a small puddle, you can see on the left, and start kind of saturating your roller. And then you can make it bigger, like on the middle part. I poured some more material, then you can make it bigger. You don't want to do a huge big area first, right? Because all of a sudden now you've got a cross grain sections that's going to sit too long or potentially sit too long. So start small, get a little bit bigger until your roller's saturated. Once your roller's saturated, then go ahead and start your first line. Now, maybe you do, if you have baseboards, you're using a small roller or a cut-in pad, right, to do the first couple inches against the wall. But then go ahead and use the saturated roller. That way you're not pouring material, like I showed with the puddle, right? You're not pouring anything else on there. It's going to increase for forgiveness. Now, there's different ways to apply. A lot of roller guys I know out there do a pullback and then move forward. So on the left, you want to do the same thing, right? You want to pour into the wet material. That way we're not having any chances of creating any lines or anything cross-grained. So you pour into the wet material, then you pull back and move forward. You can see on the right side, that's the wrong way, right? That's going to really increase your chances of having that show. And it's also going to create a thickness difference between where you stopped and started that may also show. So definitely want to pour in the wet material. Or there's another application way where you can just pour a line down the middle, all right? Kind of like what you do in like a snow plow on a T-bar on the left picture. And then you use the roller to go cross grain. That way that puddle does not sit there for very long, but you're not going, you're not completely across all of the boards. And you just kind of feather it out with cross grain, and then you go ahead and go with the grain. So again, we don't have material sitting as a puddle on the raw wood for very long. Or of course, very popular in Europe, not so popular here, but you can dip and roll. I think it's becoming more and more popular where you fill your bucket up and you can dip it, and then that way you put it directly on the floor and you go cross grain. You dip it again, you go cross grain, and then you feather it with the grain. What that does, again, it stops having a puddle being poured across raw wood. A trick I learned many years ago from a contractor out there, I wish I knew when I was doing a contractor, is tying a rag around the bottle on the jug. Some do it on the bottom, some do it on the top, whatever works, but this stops drips. I don't know how many times, especially on a dark floor where you're pouring out the material and then, it starts going down the edge of it and you put the container down, and by the time you get back to it, it's got a ring around it or it's got drips everywhere that, if it sits long enough, will show. So putting a rag, it's a nice little trick out there to stop any drips or anything pouring down to the bottom of it. Just kind of discussed real quick the dry times for our sealers. Clear and color, they need approximately about 1 to 2 hours to dry. Very standard out there. Now, our NATURESEAL and WHITESEAL, because of the being solvent-free and with the pigment, it does need 2 to 3 hours. Okay, it needs a little bit longer for sure. You guys know in your territories out there, cooler temperatures and higher relative humidity, it will increase those times for sure. Warmer and lower, drier RH will decrease times. But the trick is here, don't get on it too early. It's always safe to wait a little bit longer. Okay, so if it's been an hour 45 and you feel like it's kind of touch dry, hey, go ahead and give it a couple, 15 more minutes. We just don't want to get on them too early. And then after you apply, you can let it flow a little bit, level 5-10 minutes, and then you can increase the airflow, and that definitely will speed up the dry times. Okay, but again, take your time on these, let them dry, let them do their job. To abrade or not to abrade? It's always the question out there, right? To abrade sealers. With our material, all of our sealers, they can have finished coated directly on top without abrading under 24 hours. After 24 hours, then the sealer must be abraded. Okay, we lose that chemical bond. We got to create that mechanical bond. Now, it depends where you're at and what you want to do, right? I personally, like some contractors out there, you apply the sealer, you let it dry, then you put your first coat of finish. Typically let that dry overnight, and then you abrade, you back, tack, clean it, and then you apply your final coat. Now, I know a lot of contractors out there, and it seems to be geographic areas out there for some reason, depending what state you're in, that a lot of contractors like to sand all day, and then at night they put their sealer down, and then they go home. They come back the next morning, then they abrade the sealer, clean it, put their first coat of finish. They let that dry for a couple hours, and then they walk back in and put their next coat of finish down without abrading. And I know a lot of contractors have had issues with swirls and buffing that that finish coat and having swirls transfer through. This is a way to stop that, you know, by buffing your sealer, then just putting your coats down. But basically, Pallmann gives you the choice. Okay, if you want to abrade your sealers, abrade them. If you don't want to abrade them, don't. That's up to you guys. We give you the option. I think that's awesome. But definitely keep in mind that 24-hour rule. So just kind of a quick touch here on our finishes again. 96 NEXGEN. Okay, it's extremely forgiving for sure. You know, as light commercial grade. Same with the 24-hour rule, right? You can coat it 24 hours after you must abrade to create that mechanical bond. Must dry for 2 to 3 hours before you abrade. 96, we can go a little bit finer. You can get up to the 180 grit. I still always recommend 120 to 150. And it's approximately 7 days to cure. And we have 3 sheens available: semi-gloss, satin, and matte. Next one, Power. This is our most popular product out there. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the Power Plus technology. It's basically the strength and power of a 2-component, but has the ease of a single component. Okay, so it's got high durability. It's for commercial and residential applications. 1 component, you know, no hardener, so no waste, no mixing. It is clear. Raw materials we use will not amber or fade over time. Cures in 5 days. We have all the sheens with ultra matte, satin, semi-gloss, and gloss, and very forgiving product. One of the most forgiving products I've seen out there today. I mean, all of our finishes are forgiving, but Power definitely is up there on the top. And then, of course, when you need the strongest available out there, we've got our PALL-X Gold. It is a very high durable commercial grade finish. Definitely for your bars, restaurants, or your homeowners that have a couple dogs and kids and cats. But also if a builder or homeowner, they just say, hey, I want the best material possible, and they're willing to pay for it. This is the strongest, highest chemical resistant product out there on the market today. Okay, so when they want the best, give them the PALL-X Gold. 4-hour pot life when you have the hardener, so plenty of time to use. Same thing about the 24 hours with the braiding, or with, you know, after 24 you must abrade. This one needs a little bit longer. You need 4 or 5 hours for it to dry before braiding. And I think everyone knows with these time frames, it is longer if it's cooler temperatures and lower RH or higher RH. Apologize for that. Will be a little bit longer dry times, but that's an average 4 to 5 hours. The gold will cure in 3 days. Very fast curing out there. That's why commercial is perfect. You know, they can get back in the restaurants or bars right away, or your homeowners out there that have movers coming in 2 days. You know, give them this product, faster curing. They're going to have less issues getting on it quicker. And then our new finish that we introduced this summer, PALL-X Pure. Okay, it's also a 2-component for commercial or residential use when an ultra matte appearance is desired. Okay, so it's got a 2 to 3 point sheen, so very dull. We're getting asked this quite a bit, also kind of on the trendy list to have that type of sheen. Now, Pure is a unique formulation that does contain a small amount of white pigment, and that white pigment allows for that very low sheen, but it also provides a natural wood tone. Where we mentioned before with the sealers, right, where people are asking to have that natural wood appearance, like that raw look. When you put a shiny finish on top, it kind of changes the whole appearance. By putting this dull finish on top, it still has good clarity to the wood with the white pigment. You can't see it. It just kind of gives it that very low sheen, but also keeps that natural look of what the customer is wanting. Now, this finish is ideal for light woods, but it may also be applied on top of dark stains or exotics, but definitely test for appearance. Like I mentioned before, where we have the Brazilian cherry panel here, and you put 1 coat of PALL-X NATURESEAL, put a coat of PALL-X Power, and then you put a coat of PALL-X Pure here on top. It looks beautiful. It's got a very natural look to it, very low sheen, low coloring, but you do not see any of the white. It's a very beautiful look. So make sure you discuss with our Pallmann team out there to help you guys with systems, but definitely do testing to see what color you can achieve. We give you the options here. Okay, that's what Pallmann does. One more time here for finishes. I definitely want to give you another temperature reminder. You know, you definitely want to try to apply between 65 and 80 degrees. Okay, it's the same as the sealers out there. You also want to make sure it's acclimated, right, to kind of room temperature. Again, unless it's too hot. Basically, guys, what I'm trying to tell you out there is you don't want to have a finish that's say 60 degrees and a wood floor that's 80 degrees, you know, a 20-degree difference, or vice versa, an 80-degree material on a 60-degree floor. Having that type of temperature difference with anybody's waterborne material, there may increase some chances of bubbles, or it will kind of mess up a little bit of the dry times, the leveling flow, because it's such a temperature discrepancy. We want to try to make sure it's consistent as possible, as close as possible. As mentioned before, summer's over, right? But it's still going to be hot in some areas. Don't let it heat up in that vehicle. But for finish, a little bit different here, a little bit more important, I guess, emphasis on having cooler material will definitely perform better than hotter material, but this is really important for your final coat. You know, we need that final coat to flow, level, right, and have that even appearance. So having a little bit cooler material than the floor or the job site makes a big difference. If you have it, keep it in the cooler in your truck or van, or we've had some situations where really hot floors and they didn't want the air conditioning going, or hot houses, I guess, sorry. Didn't want the air going to blow the dust around. You put it in the fridge for an hour or so, you know, while you're vacuuming and tacking the floor. You don't want to refrigerate it overnight, of course, but, you know, just cooling it down. That will give you a longer working time. It'll increase the time for flow and level to ensure that you've got a nice, good, smooth, consistent final coat. So keep that in mind. A little bit cooler material will improve your chances of success. And this little quick touch on coverage rates. Color and clear, they're standard 450 to 500 square feet per gallon. Now that's the average. But our pigmented products, okay, our NATURESEAL and WHITESEAL, we want to go a little bit thinner. We want to try to stay to that 5 to 550 square feet. Okay, it's a little bit thinner application there. And their standard coverage rate for our 96 power and gold, you know, 450 to 5. But again, our pigmented one, our PALL-X Pure, we do want to go a little bit thinner and keep that around 5 to 550. So go a little bit thinner on the pigmented products for sure. Now, what's a good trick to how you hit coverage rate? Well, it really depends on how much material you pour on the floor. Okay, that top puddle is very consistent. That top line, I guess, what we see out there, the contractors pour, that's a really thin line. And your coverage rate is going to be dictated on how much material you start with on the floor. That top line, that's going to get you 700-800 square feet. You may have inconsistent sheens. You're not going to have very good durability. It's going to set up and dry a little bit faster, so maybe hurt your forgiveness. So you want to put the bottom one, about a 4 to 5 inch wide puddle. Start with a little bit more material, and that's going to help you achieve those coverage rates of the 450 to 5. And really, without being too crazy here, it's very difficult to pour too much product on the floor, because your applicator is going to kind of help dictate where it goes. Okay, you're just going to be pushing around a bigger puddle if it's too much. But you can put on too little, and that's where a lot of issues come into play, is by pouring too little of a line and putting it on too thin. So if you're going to err in a little bit on the thicker coverage rate rather than the thinner. And this is the same for rolling when you're doing your pullback, or if you're going cross grain or whatever style besides your dip and roll. That top part, I've seen many contractors pour a thin line, and you're coating 20 square feet with that, you know, a 4x5 area, way too thin. You're just not going to get the coverage rate that you desire. Or on the bottom one, much thicker line, 4 to 5 inch puddle. Again, the roller is going to help dictate getting that material down. And as soon as you pull that back up to yourself to feather out, if it's too much material in the roller, it's going to come off and leave a little puddle right there and right in front of you. Okay, it will dictate the coverage rate. Again, go a little bit thicker rather than err on the side of going thinner, because that's where you're going to have more issues or problems or anything like that. Now, on the finish side and the abrasion, we get asked this quite a bit and go through it quite a bit, where we recommend using more aggressive grits on our braces for intercoat abrasion. We kind of really recommend no finer than 150. I know it was mentioned before on the 96, you could go up to 180s, but really rule of thumb, we really want to try to stay with 150 or coarser. Our material gets very hard very quickly. And what happens is we got to create a nice mechanical bond, right? We got to get that good scratch pattern in there. And also any debris or anything from your initial coats, you got to get it knocked out. But because our material gets so hard, so fast, we do want to stay in the coarser side. The Norton red and yellow sand dollars out there, they work perfect. Your personal preference, red or the yellow one, we're fine with either. Don't recommend using the blue or the green, but yellow or red is up to you. And then the Norton red heat screens, very good material. They definitely limit the swirls, and so you can use coarser grits. Anyone out there has used a 120 or 150 screen and you've gotten swirls, switching to a red heat will definitely limit your chances, I guess, to have swirls. We definitely love the Norton products. We've had great success with Norton, and definitely recommend having their material used on ours. Now, also out there, first thing, we do not recommend the maroon pad. It's not coarse enough. It does not abrade our material. Some manufacturers say you can maroon pad their finish. Ours cannot. Like I mentioned, how hard it gets and how quick it gets, how quickly it gets hard. It just polishes the floor, and you're going to lose adhesion, and you're not going to take out any dirt or debris or anything grain raised. So we do not recommend maroon pad. For that top picture, you still have a lot of contractors that use the sanding strips. But when I've talked to abrasive manufacturers, they all say that you should really change your sanding strips every 150 square feet or less, 150 maximum square feet. And that's not very much, okay? But they clog up pretty quickly. And you can see the strips. There's not a whole bunch of grit or sandpaper, abrasive touching the floor, okay? Which then goes to the next one, the discs on the bottom there. Because there's more grit and more touching, those abrasive manufacturers recommend every 200 square feet or less. Now, most contractors out there use the paper for too long, okay, for a couple hundred square feet, 400 to 500 square feet before changing. Well, that paper does clog up pretty quickly. And what happens is when it's clogged up, you're not sanding the floor anymore. You're not abrading it. You're not creating a scratch pattern. You're not taking debris out. You're not creating a scratch for a mechanical bond. All you're doing is you're really polishing the floor if you're even really touching it. Okay, you will increase your chances to lose adhesion with those finished coats. Okay, so poor abraded or too fine abraded finish, there is a chance for peeling, flaking, or adhesion loss on your final coat. So definitely keep that in mind. Do not want to intercoat abrade with too fine a material. Next is kind of a little tip. Keep your vacuums clean. Too many times I've seen on jobs, being out there with contractors that they don't clean their filters out very often or change bags. Now we have a bagless system, but definitely keep your filters clean. Leaf blowers work great to blow out your filters. Don't ever use a compressor with a very, the fine tip blower, like you blow your machines out, because that will puncture holes in the filter. Something like a leaf blower, something bigger that's, not so compressed air in a fine point. But keep your filters clean, keep your vacuums clean, because a thin layer of dust on the floor will inhibit adhesion. Okay, the finish will stick to the dust, especially if it's only a couple hour old finish. It's maybe a little bit stickier, a little bit gummier, where a nice vacuum will help pick it up more than a non-clean vacuum. And last but not least, on the cleaning the floor is tacking, and that's also having that potential fine dust on the floor, which is more common if you just give it a few hours. It's a little bit stickier, right, compared to letting it sit overnight. That you need to get that dust off to increase your chances of adhesion. And in our Pallmann hardwood floor cleaning kit, we've got two awesome pads. The left, the microfiber, but on the right we have a dusting pad, which picks up dust kind of in an electrostatic manner. It works great for tacking floors. I've been through this for years with NWFA and contractors, where some say, well, you got to wet tack first and then dry tack, and others are saying, no, you dry tack then wet tack. After some testing, what I've really found from my point of view, and I think a lot of contractors out there agree, dry tacking first, then wet tacking is kind of the more ideal system. Because if you wet tack first, it's easy to kind of clump up some of that dust, and then it's wet, and then it hardens and it gets kind of crusty, where dry tack after that won't take it out. So dry tack with this electrostatic pad, I do that here at the training center. It works much better than towels and rags that do not have that electrostatic component. You tack it, vacuum it off, tack it, vacuum it off. I typically just use the dry tacking only with this pad. But if you want a super clean floor, or you're nervous about it with the homeowners that they're going to pick everything out, do a couple dry tack, maybe twice with the white pad, vacuum it out every once in a while, and then get the yellow microfiber, get that wet, and then do a wet tack for your final cleanup there. But getting that layer of dust off is very important. But we've got the products for you. Okay, no more towels, no more rags. This stuff is going to work great for you. Now to kind of end up everything here before we get to questions and answers, just as a reminder, I'd like to bring up our Pallmann Passion Tour. Some of you out there do know this from the beginning of this year, depending on where you're located. Others of you might have seen it on our website or our Facebook page or any of our other social media. Unfortunately, with COVID, we had to stop it. And we're looking forward to bringing it back sometime next year, not sure when. But just as a reminder, keep in touch with us, keep on our social media, and we'll give you updates on when we're going to get this program going again, and get out there in your neighborhood and get in your area. And to know what's going on with that, definitely connect with us. We are social. We're definitely part of, you can see here, maybe take a screenshot or write it down if you're not part of all of this. We're Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, and of course our regular website there at pallmann.us. So please connect with us, follow us. We'll give you updates. We do programs. We do giveaways. And another way to do that too is also get it on our website on Pallmann there, and go to the contact tab and then sign up. And we'll send you product updates, or maybe what the Passion Tour is doing, or contests, giveaways, things like that. So please connect with us socially on the media aspect, and also on our website here, so you can keep involved in what we're doing and what's going on. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate the attention here. That's all for me, and we'll turn back to Josh a little bit and see if we got some questions that we can go through.
Yeah, Kelsey, just a few questions, and fantastic tips overall. Greatly appreciate all the info there that you shared with us. One question that kind of came in, well, a little administrative part here. One question was, can we get a copy of the PowerPoint? And the short answer is yes. We're going to have a copy of this video on the website. So you'll be able to see this entire video on our website, and you'll be able to kind of go from there. One question that did come in is, how about if you jump, when we're putting finish down, if we jump from 40 to 80, talk to us about making, somewhat of big jumps with putting products down and, everything that's kind of involved there. When you do make that big sandpaper jump, I guess, or potentially skip a grit, as you kind of alluded to, what are some challenges? Certainly there are some floors it may work on, but why don't you explain that just a little bit more?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I mean, it works. Okay, doing a 40 grit belt and an 80 grit belt. I mean, does putting the waterborne material down on there, does it work? Of course. But it definitely, I did that for many years as a contractor. That's the way I was taught. But really kind of trying to teach and work through here is just kind of the best practice, that we're trying to achieve. And what happens is the sealer really absorbs pretty deep, because that 40 grit, creates very, very deep pockets, in the pores, very deep valleys. And so
Right.
that sealer really absorbs down in, and it gets deeper in the wood than it really needs to be. Okay, so you end up using a lot more sealer than you needed. And then what happens is, because it kind of goes down in the pores so deep, you may not completely seal the pores up to the surface. And so then you put the coat of finish down, and then that fills up a little bit top of the pores. So it's still kind of a little bit in the wood, and then it creates a thinner layer. And then you put your final coat down. Basically, you have a thinner mill thickness of material on top of the wood. And to get proper chemical resistance, scuff and scratch resistance, we got to have a mill thickness of finish, a layer. And that's with anybody's products. So it works 40-80, but you're going to have those challenges of maybe not the best durability and long lasting. And you're definitely have more grain rates. It's going to be a thicker, deeper type of grain that's going to be popping up on you. So it's going to be much rougher. It's going to create a lot more dimples when you buff and more debris. So by not skipping a grit, basically what you're doing, if you did a 40-60-80, then that sealer truly seals the wood pores. It doesn't get deeper than it needs to be. And then that way, the finish will really sit on top and give it that thicker mill thickness for overall performance, and also forgiveness, and just ease of moving the material around, having it not absorb as much, and so just having a nice smoother application. So I hope that answers, the question there.
Yeah, definitely. Another question is what about white sealer on a herringbone? Any issues there?
Good question. Actually, we have a herringbone here in our training center that we've done a lot with the white seal. No, there's no issues, but like any time when you're doing a pigmented product, it's smarter to do a little bit smaller sections. You know how I showed the picture where there's the panel that's 10 feet wide and pick a 5 to 6 foot wide area. You definitely want to maybe pick a 4 to 5 foot wide area in the herringbone. And it's roller stipple, right? So you're not going to have lines. It's going to go across grain. Roller stipple is very consistent, but it really depends on your layout. Okay, so if it's just let's say a 150 square foot bedroom, you can just do the strips like you would on a plank wood, right, going with the grain. But if you got a big open room, you're going to want to do sections, do little squares. I'll describe it, but you definitely then you want to talk to one of our territory managers, and they can help you walk through this a little bit more in detail. But you do squares. Let's say like a 5 by 5 area, right? Let's say you start in the corner of a room, and you do a 5 foot by 5 foot area backwards, and then you do another 5 foot by 5 foot area backwards. Well, then you go to the right of that, right? And then you do another 5 by 5 section and move backwards. And then you kind of bounce back and forth. So you're doing squares at a time. That way you don't have a line sitting too long. Because yes, with a herringbone, you can have lines on the right or the side of it, right? Or where you're stopping on your pullback. So you don't want to let it sit more than a couple minutes. So you start doing the squares and doing sections where you kind of bounce around the room a little bit. But once you do it once or twice, it's a very easy system. Very easy to get used to. That's what they do in Europe. They've got a lot of that finger block parquet, that switches directions every little square, and they just do squares. Okay, 5 by 5, 5 by 5, moving over. That way a line never sits for too long. So it's just changing up your procedure a little bit. Instead of doing strips, following it, doing those squares is going to be very beneficial. And it's hard to talk about it, but definitely something that we can draw out. On a phone conversation or something that we can email, or something if it's not being if I'm not being clear enough on how to do each square and not let a line sit for too long.
Gotcha. No, it's really a good question. Hey, another this is always a question that always gets brought up. When we talk about the 24-hour rule, and the customers always ask, hey, when can I go ahead and put my furniture back on? And that always depends upon, of course, what type of which finish of ours are you using, with the cure times and so forth. But let's just review that. It's a question that gets popped up, gets asked a lot. I know you and I are sometimes, we find ourselves saying the old school, you got to wait 2 weeks, you got to wait, do this. And that, that was just ingrained to us as we got brought up through the hardwood industry. But go ahead and let's talk just a little bit more about furniture setback and our Pallmann finishes.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we all deal with it. I mean, I know I dealt with it a lot, and I know contractors out there deal with it all the time. I mean, homeowners want to get back right away, right? I mean, you try to tell them, you know, I just redid your whole floor. Give it a few days, you know, for it to cure out, and then you're good. You're done, right? For many years, and they just like, oh, I want to get on. I want to get on. It's a thorn, I think, in everybody's side there, for sure. Really, rule of thumb is definitely depending on the product you use and the cure time. Obviously, the longer the better. So if you're using 96, you know, we have a 7-day cure time, and if you have to show the homeowner, you know, hey, it says 7 days cure. So what that means is, you know, no area rugs, and we don't. You want to be very careful about dragging any furniture. Now with 96. Typically, depends on your climate, right? Here in Colorado, you know, 48 hours to 72, so 2 to 3 days. You know, we can definitely have furniture lift and set it down on the floor, okay? But it's always susceptible to scuffing, you know, those first couple days especially. If you're in Florida or Carolina, those type of climates, you want to wait 3 to 4 days, you know, before really getting the furniture back down. And then, of course, you can speed that up with power, you know, 2 days, and gold, 1 day. And basically, the rule of thumb is the first 24 hours, it's still pretty tender. Okay, it's very easy to scuff and get shiny marks, you know, dragging chairs, you know, from your kitchen table or something like that. 48 hours, it's got a pretty good harden, you know, 90, it's at least 90 something % cured in all of our material. So 48 is kind of a good number to stop at. If you're in the wet, moist climates, a little bit cooler, I'd give it the 72 hours. So I know it's kind of roundabout, but basically to kind of conclude that, always push for longer, always push for more towards the cure time. But if you're rushed, I would do no less than 48 hours with any of our material for sure. It's still susceptible after 48, right? But I would never go less than 48 for furniture, just to ensure that you're not getting scuff and scratches.
Yeah, and we always want to make sure we're using protector pads, that we're not dragging the furniture across the floor, that we're picking up the furniture, setting it down. You know, take all the best practices when moving furniture onto that new floor, and just remember, the longer that you can give that floor time to cure out, as Kelsey just got done saying, the better and the most success chances you're going to have. Now, as we always say, you know, a floor is going to scratch, it's going to dent, it's going to ding, but it is just more susceptible to chemical spills and scratches and all that kind of stuff, certainly in that curing out phase, which, you know, varies amongst the products, which Kelsey went over just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, and add on to that, especially in my time when I was a warranty supervisor at a company, and then had my own business, and then I've also seen many years here at Pallmann, is a lot of damage to floors with scuffing, marring, scratching happens within the first week. It's
Yeah.
amazing. So that's where, you know, really as contractors, I put your foot down with homeowners and explain that to them, to say, look, once this material's hard, look, we're good for a couple of years. You're going to get indentations, you know, in your wood, but not scratches. You're not going to get scuffing, you know, or shiny marks, but you definitely have those possibilities in the first week, and definitely within the first 48 hours. But I'd really try to stick to the guns there, because a lot of damage happens those first couple of days in that first week.
Yeah, exactly. Couple more questions here. One of them is, you know, is there any concerns at all with tannin pull or burning when applying the Pallmann sealers over wood, especially with over woods with high tannins such as white oak? Any issues with any of the new pigmented sealers or anything like that?
That's a great question. Kind of as a reminder, I think telling you guys before, where we are a European company, right? You know, that's where our roots are, being German based, and we've been in Europe for 100 years. We've only been in the US for about 13 to 14 years, so we're newer here. But in Europe, their most common wood species is white oak, right? Here in the US, it's red oak. So we have been, we have formulated our products for very many years to handle tannin pull because of the amount of white oak out there in Europe. So We have great tannin blockers in our sealers, in our PALL-X Clear, PALL-X Color, and especially with our newer products, with our NATURESEAL and WHITESEAL. And that white pigment does help a little bit with it, but the tannin blockers that we have not had any complaints, and we do a lot of white oak in Europe. And like I said, these products have been out a little bit longer out there than they have here. So no complaints. We've had no issues. We've got a couple white oak panels here. Have never had an issue or a complaint with tannin pulls. So you can have confidence with our sealers on a white oak.
That's great. That's great. Well, we're approaching the hour mark here, and just have one last question here that looks like we just got in. Could you review with us just a little bit color versus clear, and just kind of which woods are the best to use with clear? Which woods should we kind of steer a little bit more towards PALL-X Color? I know you had a couple bullet points in your PowerPoint there. If you don't mind just reviewing that, and I think if there's no other questions after that, we'll certainly wrap things up.
Great, that's a great question. You know, it's somewhere where with clear is where we kind of really recommend more in the lighter woods, because I think for so many years, especially with oil modified out there, you know, with your maples, especially, but your ash, pine, even just your red oak and white oaks, you really get that yellowish hue and coloring with an oil modified. And having a clear sealer like PALL-X Clear, it keeps that light wood light, right? You don't want, you know, some people want that lightness of the maple and the lightness of maybe an oak. You know, they don't want it too colored. So that's where you're really going to want to use clear for light woods. Yeah, you know, can it be used on some Brazilian cherries and things out there? Yeah, we've seen success, but we've also seen a few of the cherries, and especially like walnuts. It just the coloring is not very good, and the forgiveness factor is part of that problem. Okay, so it's really made and ideal for light woods. PALL-X Color, any wood species. It really is whatever your desire is for the appearance. Okay, what color you're looking for, what you desire, or I guess the homeowner or builder, what they're looking for. Which mainly is the exotic woods, the darker species, or the darker stains. You know, when it's dark, they want it dark. They want that color to really pop, and the color will do that. Okay, the clear will not. It won't pop it. But also, you can use color for your red oaks, white oaks, and things, and your light woods. It just depends on what you want to achieve. So I always recommend if you do a lot of red oaks or white oaks, that maybe make a panel or two. If you have in your shop or warehouse or at your house in your garage, that you can actually put down a little bit of clear on one side, put a little bit of color on the other side. It's nice to let that dry overnight, and then put a coat of finish down. Then you can really see the difference. There is a difference that is very noticeable between the two, and either one works, right? But it depends on what you want. So conclusion, rule of thumb, color for the darker woods, darker stains, any wood species, and clear for the lighter woods, or you want a light appearance in red oak or white oak, and if you're doing white or gray or pastel stains. So that's kind of a good rule of thumb to keep.
Yeah, great. Well, Kelsey, certainly appreciate your time. Certainly appreciate everybody for joining us today's time. You know, again, we've been really just flattered and humbled by all the people that have attended these webinars and the feedback that we've received. You know, certainly during this interesting time. We would love to come see you on a job site. Our territory managers are going out, and we are traveling to job sites where it is safe and where contractors would like us to visit. So if there is a specific machine, finish, question, anything like that, please feel free to reach out to us, or feel free to reach out to your local Pallmann territory manager. But with that, again, my name is Josh Newberger, I'm Director of Marketing. Really want to thank you for the time. And I'm joined today with Kelsey Quigg, Product Manager and Technical Manager for Pallmann. Kelsey, any last words before we go?
Not really. I just thank everyone for attending. But I guess one last thing, yes, definitely, like I mentioned before, and Josh just mentioned about the territory managers. They're there for you guys, okay? Like I said, if you're a contractor, distributor, or architect, whatever, who's watching this, our territory managers are there for you to answer questions, to assist on maybe on job sites, of course. So please take advantage of our sales team out there. They're here for you. So please take advantage of them and call them.
Sounds good. Well, thanks again, everybody, for their time. We look forward to seeing you guys soon. If there's any questions, as Kelsey mentioned, reach out to that local Pallmann territory manager or reach out to us at pallmann.us@ootseenoots.com. And we sincerely appreciate everybody's time. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.